Hello, and thank you all for coming here. How do I get that thing off of my screen? Thank you. Oh, do I have to escape out of the?
Yeah, you should be able to click that. I just don't know where your pass is. You should be able to click gather right there and exit out of that. Yep.
All right,
There we go.
I'm sorry. Sorry for the little technicals.
Want to put your presentation?
Yes, I do. All right. Now that we got that out of the way. So thank you guys for coming today. I really appreciate it. What I wanted to talk to you all about today is what I believe is one of the critical things missing from entrepreneurial education today. So 95% of entrepreneurs admit to making at least one poor decision in their business. The other 5% are lying about it, or they're in complete denial. Everyone is making mistakes, but what matters is not that you avoid them, but that you prepare and be ready to manage what happens when they do happen, because they're going to happen. A little bit about me, 20 plus years of corporate paralegal. I worked with entrepreneurs and startups and then went to multinationals. When I left the multinational corporation world, I became a digital nomad. And what that means is what you see here is my sum total of my belongings. I have a carry-on, a briefcase, and a backpack, and that's how I travel the world. And I meet with entrepreneurs all around the world. I've learned a lot of things. I build communities, and I meet with entrepreneurs from every different country, from every different industry, and at every different funding stage. And the result of all that information just started to build patterns, and I created a book out of all the experiences that I learned. So we're going to talk about that today. Because I come from the legal world, I always start off with definitions. So definition of an entrepreneur. When I started running my podcast called Entrepreneurs IRL, one of the first things that I kept hearing from people was, I don't really consider myself an entrepreneur. Like, okay, so what do you consider yourself? Well, I'm a small business person. I'm an independent business person. I'm a this, I'm a that. But to me, they're all entrepreneurs, at least as it relates to this discussion. So whether you run a mom and pop shop or a photo business or a gym, that all is the people I'm talking about today. So when I started to look at the term emotional intelligence, of course, I went to the trusty Webster and Oxford dictionaries. And what I got was a definition that didn't really resonate well with me. So in true entrepreneurial fashion, I changed it. So for me, emotional intelligence is really about the way you show up, why you show up that way, and how you interact and intersect with the world. It's the way you use a lens to view the world, and that shapes how you actually interact with the world. So the reason why this is important, and I know there's entrepreneurs in the room, is because these feelings are going to show up throughout your entrepreneurial journey. Oftentimes, they're going to show up in varying degrees, in various time frames, unexpectedly, and sometimes at the same time, or they will shift very quickly from great pride to terrible fear, or from self-doubt to great stress, and then to excitement. So it all happens left and right. I like to say that being an entrepreneur is like raising a toddler and a teenager at the same time on a roller coaster in public view. It's just a crazy thing. And sometimes you just look at it and think, oh, it's the most perfect, beautiful thing in the world. And other times you're like, I can't do anything right. So all these different things show up. And it's important to know about this because all businesses, at least today, are run by humans. And because all humans are running businesses, we have to know more about the human engine running the business. Schools are going to teach you about operations and strategy, but they don't spend a lot of time on what they consider to be soft skills. I consider those to be critical skills because this is what's driving your decisions. All the stories that you have about who you are, how you present into the world, how you interact with the world, all that is going to show up in how you operate your business. Your behavior's driven by your emotions, and your emotions are driven by your experiences. And those leave imprints and stories, and those are going to show up. So it's very important that you understand what those stories are, because they can create some epic failures, both in your personal and your professional life. So I had an emergency call one day from a new client. And he called me up and he was like, I need an urgent session. I need to make a decision. And it's a really big one. And the last time I made a big decision, I totally screwed it up. And so right there, he, in my opinion, had won half the battle. One, he had the self-awareness to know he needed help. And two, he knew that he was playing old stories. Like that last decision is really coming into how he's going to make this next decision. And he was scared and he wanted to make sure he didn't use the two. They were actually very different. One was personal and one was professional, but he knew that because he had this fear that he had screwed it up before, that he had to get through that so he could actually deal with just the thing at hand and not trying to fix the last decision or prevent it from repeating. So the key there was self-awareness. He knew that he needed help. He knew that there was additional things going on in his decision process. And so what he did was he then was able to recognize that, stop in process and say, what do I need? And then reach out, find it, and get it. Good news is I followed up with him and he feels he made a really good decision. And he feels that taking that time to go through a few key questions, a few key thoughts, he really felt that that helped him clear other things so he could get to the decision at hand. So why this matters is because building a business is based on thousands of decisions. You're going to make big decisions as an entrepreneur about where to launch, how to launch, where do you want to present your business, how are you going to market it? And you're going to make the small decisions like paper clips and Post-it notes. You're going to do it all. So what you need to know is what emotional state are you in and how can you put yourself in the best position for a good, clean decision that benefits your business, not just your immediate time frame. So EQ will come into play when you're managing risk. It comes into play because how you assess risk, or maybe some of the stories from your past. Were you that daredevil kid that was on the skateboard left and right, climbing every tree with your mother going, oh, yep, there he goes again? Or were you the one that the mother was hanging around going, oh, don't do that, don't fall, you're gonna hurt yourself? You know, those will play in your head, right? So if you have some background, it may not be yours. Sometimes you have made some decisions. I don't know about you all, but as a teenager, I made a few decisions that maybe I could have done better. And so I could carry those decisions with me that, oh, I'm terrible at this or I'm horrible at that. But I can clear those out and just deal with what's present. I can manage risk better because I understand what is playing in the background. Decision-making goes hand in hand with risk assessment, right? You will make decisions based on the lens that you see the world or the lens that you see a situation. If you are always questioning your decisions, you're going to not feel confident going into something. So do you ask for help? Do you set aside a team to help you? What can you do that's going to help it all so that you can have the best situation possible for you? Emotional intelligence is totally going to benefit you in hiring. This is where I have seen some people who are struggling with either worthiness issues or ego problems choose hiring differently. And some of that is they don't want somebody smarter in the room than them, or they will just create a team of all sorts of people that think like that. And when you do that, you don't end up with a diverse situation. It plays into leadership. Thank you, Brene Brown and Simon Sinek. We've talked a lot about that now in the leadership world. Emotional intelligence helps create empathy, and empathy helps you deal with other people. Everybody's got a story. Stuff's gonna happen. The way I view it is going to be based on my emotional intelligence and how I deal with the other person that may have made a mistake or may have made a bad decision or is in stress or is worried about something that I think is fluff. How I deal with that is really going to affect how I can nurture them to be their best and how we can get the best for the business if that's what we're working with. Competition. How you view your competition is hugely affected by the depth of your emotional intelligence. There's a story Simon Sinek shares quite a bit about when he was doing some speaking engagements and he spoke with Microsoft, and this was at the time that the personal music players were just coming out. And of course, Microsoft, after the speaking engagement, gave him a Zoom. I don't even remember those. He then went to Apple and they gave him an iPod. And he was sitting with one of the executives from Apple and he said, you know, last week I was with Microsoft and they gave me one of these Zoom things and it's actually a better product. And the Apple executive said, I have no doubt. And that was it. He wasn't trying to make excuses. He wasn't trying to do anything other than get the information and realize maybe that's true, but this is what we have. And this is what's in your hand. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to make this the best product. We're not going to try and make it the Zoom. We're not trying to make it Zoom 2. We're trying to make it the iPod. And by the way, P.S., we have iPods now. We do not have Zooms. Asking for assistance, very, very important. If you don't have emotional intelligence, sometimes you think about asking for assistance as a sign of weakness. Sometimes you think of it as something that, oh, I should know this. I can't let anybody else know that I don't, right? You have all sorts of stories maybe running in the background. That is going to affect how you do what you do and whether you do this for the best thing of your business. Failure and success, hugely affected by the depth of your emotional intelligence. If you understand that a failure does not mean you are a failure. Oftentimes something happens, and instead of saying, I have done this, we then label ourselves as this, right? I have had a failure. No, all of a sudden I'm a failure. Wait a minute, are you really? Or did you just do something that didn't work out the way you wanted it to, or the way you expected it to? And when we can step out of the labeling and the name calling, we actually can then look at what's actually at hand. We can put some framework around it and build on that, grow from it, learn from it, and develop. We don't do that with either failure or success. We run the risk of repeating it. We run the risk of just badgering ourselves and not learning from it. And we run the risk of being blind, because it happens with success as well. Oh, I did this, it went out great. I'm just a huge success, just call me Midas. And here's the deal. You might then try and put a car in space or something silly. That doesn't need to be done, right? Sorry, Elon. So what EQ and developing it and creating a deeper understanding of your EQ and cultivating it, what it will do for you is it builds resistance. It helps you recognize failures and successes and get the juice out of them, right? And so that will build resistance. That whole fall down 7 times, get up 8. Every time you get up, that is resilience. I think I just used resistance, not resistance, resilience. It creates clarity. Once you wipe away those stories that are playing in the background, once you understand that, okay, I've made a terrible mistake over here, but that doesn't mean I can't make good decisions. So what is there and what is here? And what do I need here to make the best decision for the benefit of my company or the benefit of this moment? Establishes boundaries. When you have empathy and when you understand yourself, you can set up boundaries to both protect yourself, and you can recognize boundaries in other people and realize when you're crossing over something and when you may need to step back and give somebody some more space, or when they might need more support, or when things are going a little whopper job for them. It creates those boundaries so you can work with them. That's really a deep form of empathy. It cultivates empathy. The better you know yourself, the better you begin to see things in other people. And if you can see things, maybe you won't take things so personally, right? You see the person in the VC room as you step in, and you're like, wow, that person reminds me of my father. And, all sorts of stories start playing in. Now, you could see that and then recognize, oh, not my dad, not my dad. Put that aside, see the person, and then let them be who they are and not project something else on it. I can tell you that VC meeting is going to go way better. It will identify framework. Once you have an understanding of what is present, what you're dealing with, and what is not what you're dealing with, you have the framework now to build the best results for yourself. And a good emotional intelligence is going to help you promote self-care. Let me tell you, this hustle culture is just driving me nuts. I hate it. It is incorrect. It is not the way to do this. Don't just drink Red Bull, work 20 hours a week, and see our spouses, our friends, and our loved ones 15 minutes a day. That's not how it works well. It can work, not for long, but it won't get you through. And I've dealt with a number of people who have suffered from terrible, terrible burnout that I can tell you, for some people, it takes years to get back from that. So you gotta have the self-care involved. That does not mean you're weak. And again, having a stronger emotional intelligence will help you understand that stopping for a weekend and having some creativity time is going to end up helping you at the office so much better. So all of those things can help you benefit how you show up, how you move your business forward, and how you work with your team, whether it's your personal team in the office, whether it's your vendors, whether it's, funders, whomever it is. It's also going to help you how you interact, how you understand your clients, and how you respond to your clients. All of this is what I consider to be the entrepreneur advantage. So you can do business like everyone else is, or you can stop and spend some time to delve into the human engine driving your business, and then you'll have the entrepreneur advantage. So that is my overview of what I have seen from every industry, every level of funding, bootstrapping or funded, multinationals even, or entrepreneurs. And these are the things that I have figured out through all the patterns actually help people move forward. So at this point, I welcome people to challenge that. Did I say something that you don't agree with? I had a very interesting Lyft ride back in Chicago with a gentleman who was absolutely adamant that he did not make emotional decisions ever. And he was very, very strong about that. So we had a little discussion about it. I'm open to what people are dancing with and how people see this as it relates to their business as you have sat through some of these thoughts. Anybody willing to share or have questions about this? Hang on 1 second for the microphone. It's big time now. It's big time now.
With COVID causing communication to be really pushed into the direction of telephoning and Zoom, there's so much missing from that way of communicating.
Right.
A lot of the things you're talking about are great to kind of translate that into those levels of communication. When you're on Zoom, you get a better read of reaction from a bunch of pictures you're trying to react to. When you're on the phone, I've had this happen so many times recently that I can't tell really what her emotion is until she reacts to what I've said. Oh my gosh, it's that. But that is all we have to do.
Yeah,
Your
so
thoughts on that?
I think that that's an important thing. There's a couple of things that I want to say about that. One, don't do Zoom on your phone because you can't see enough. You need a bigger screen. But second off, yes, you have to be more aware, because what sometimes happens is people are doing this in the Zoom, right? They're looking at themselves, right? So you want to make sure that you are reading the room, right? And try and get as many of those faces on there. And being really sensitive because you're getting this, right? You're not even getting this. So that's really important because you have to be a little more sensitive to that. Well, that's the other thing that I want to talk about is because as we bring our offices online, and this isn't necessarily related to entrepreneurs, but freelancers and stuff like that, but being a manager or a person of a higher level, what you have just done is stepped in somebody's home life. And that's something that I think is super important to recognize, because you now know things about that person that they may or may not wanted to have shared with you. You may see pictures in the background of their family. You may hear their dog or their cat walks across the screen, or you may see their partner that they didn't really want to share with you that they have, right? They may have things that they have to manage, right? You see a lot of things that might indicate how they spend their money. And so as a manager, it's super important that you are able to hold boundaries for that. And so that's a separate aside, and finding ways to help them retain their privacy to the extent that they wish, and share only what they share. Where it relates to being on the phone and all of that, having a stronger sense of empathy of what could be going on with them. What are they saying without saying it? I spend a lot of time hearing what people mean, not what they say. And I think that that tends to require more acuity, more intentional listening. We're terrible as a society about intentional listening. So it involves more of that. And it involves asking things. And it involves checking in with people and saying, geez, I'm sorry, that seems to have come out wrong, or wow, that seems to have caused some reaction. Can we talk about that? Right? And so be open, be willing to have the difficult conversation. If you see that you just stepped on something, have the conversation if it's appropriate. And if it's not, find some time that when it is appropriate to have that conversation. But it's really being much more present and taking as much of what you can pull in and using that to assess and react. Is that helpful? Alden, is that helpful?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think it's so important, the backdrop. I think it's so important, the backdrop, because, for example, when you see newscasters, so much of their projecting of their personality is which flowers they think to put in their flower pot, which family pictures they've chosen, which book they've chosen to sort of highlight on their bookcase.
Yep.
So they're sending all those messages beyond what they're saying. And to the same extent, when you're on Zoom, they're doing similar things that you may not be thinking of it that way, but you have to think about it because those messages are there and they're going to interpret them how they want to, not how you expect them to.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And it's super important. And it is recognizing too that there is a lot of manipulation in people's backgrounds when it comes to certain things like newscasting.
I'm going to be a bit cynical about that.
Please do.
Carefully placed book on your bedside. I really doubt you're actually reading that one. And I really doubt that you chose that flower. You probably hire somebody to pick your flower of the day.
Right.
I'm not impressed.
Right, and then sometimes that is, sometimes the books are stacked behind them so that they can look smart, and it's just staging.
I just want to reply to that. Isn't that kind of with everything we do though? The clothes we wear, the car we drive, whatever we have, like you're always projecting an image. So I don't know, I'm kind of cynical too about everything.
Yes,
Just
but
about-
but you recognize too that when the layman then turns on Zoom, they've got their kitchen cabinet back there, or they've got, their family picture that, might not have a traditional family there. And maybe you knew that, maybe you didn't. Maybe they wanted to share that. Maybe they just forgot it was there. You want to make sure that you are sensitive to that and aware of that, and aware that they've just let you into their home or their coffee shop, or if you're me, their Airbnb or their hotel room or whatever. So.
I think on the flip side, if you're having a maybe not so great background, you might get a negative impression.
Yes.
And even like I know God interviews or stuff, people always make recommendations and what is behind you. Sometimes people don't have a background.
Yep.
And those new background, that's like a kind of innovation thing. But it's interesting how your surroundings can really change perspective. If you want to feel less stress, if you, sorry.
No, because I have had to teach online a lot, and I've been in a place with either bad internet or a place where I just couldn't find quite the right background. It stressed me out, like, oh my God, what are my students gonna think of me today? Are they gonna think I'm not serious? Is this light not good enough on my face? Are they not gonna be listening because they're gonna be distracted by something? And I've like actually been like, scrambled a few times, like, oh no, what effect is this going to have on this meeting? So it's a big thing.
Yes, I run a podcast, and because I'm a nomad, I intentionally did it audio only. Because sometimes I'm recording in a walk-in closet, sometimes I'm recording underneath a coffee table in a hotel room with pillows all around me, trying to buffer the sound, so. Are there any questions online at all? Okay. No? All right. So if there's no further questions, if there's no further comments, you know, I can let you all go. I believe that as you start to let this marinate over time, I think you'll notice as you move through your days in your business how this actually shows up, and there'll be a little bit more peaks of self-awareness of, oh wow, that's coming through here. That doesn't belong with this situation. So I hope that if anything, what this does is it brings some awareness to, you know, your day and how you run your business and how you deal with your day to day.
I guess I have a general question.
Yeah.
I know you're obviously talking a lot about emotional intelligence, but what do you want, I guess, to be the main takeaway when people read this book?
I want them to understand that the human that's running the business is equally as important, if not more so, than the strategy and the operations, because that actually, married with strategy and operations, can make a great success, and that's what I have seen. And when it's off balance and when it's not well attuned, I have seen epic failures. I have seen a CEO, I worked with him for quite some time, and we kept coming around in a circle. And really, he was trying to deal with some other issues emotionally, but he kept trying to push it through with his business, and it actually took his business out. So I've seen epic failures and I've seen raving successes when people use both strategy, operations, and emotional intelligence. It is the three-legged stool, in my opinion.
Let's see, think of another question to ask you. I think recognizing your emotional intelligence is definitely the first step, and kind of really, I'm interested to know, in terms of understanding your emotional intelligence and then being able to communicate it out into your business or into people in your life, what is your biggest tip for doing so? I know that sometimes it's like easy to recognize it within yourself, but then telling others is sometimes more challenging. So, what are you doing?
Yeah. One of the main things that I talk to people about is really stopping yourself as you are in process of doing things. As you are in process of making a decision, why am I feeling that way? What kind of gut reaction did I have? What kind of decision analyzing tools am I using? Why do I feel this way immediately when this man walks into the room, right? Or this woman walks into the room? What story is playing there? As soon as we can stop and start to analyze that, we have a basis to then start to figure out what's going on and figure out where we need to go with that, right? Is this something that is a historical thing that has no bearing in this? Or am I recognizing a pattern and this is a red flag and this is somebody that I want to stay away from? Like, what is going on there? Every time you're making decisions or sitting down and having a strong feeling, stopping in process. And instead of just going through, I was working with a gentleman brand new into the entrepreneurial world, and he wants to get into real estate, he wants to do some house flipping, right? And so he came and talked to me about the fact that he was putting in his first bid, very excited and all that. And when I talked to him afterwards, I said, so how did that go? And he was like, well, I didn't get it. I was like, great, so what did you do, like, post-mortem? He's like, well, I just didn't get it. I said, is there more to that? It's like, yeah, I didn't get the bid. Why? Who were you up against? What was going on with that? What do you feel about that? Because if you just go, I didn't get the bid, next time I got a bid higher, you're going to go into the next situation. Do you really? Maybe not. Maybe you really needed to bid higher on this last one. It has nothing to do with this next one. So, but if you don't clear those, if you don't keep everything separated, then it totally drives your next decision. In that real estate thing, it's just an easy way to see it, but we do that in everything we do, right? Did I overspend on this last vendor invoice that I did? Did I overspend on that, or did I not charge enough to this person? And then we take that into the next thing and the next thing, and we're like, wait a minute, step back. What's going on here? What are the circumstances, and do they belong in this decision? And then let's separate this and deal with this as its own thing. So is that helpful in what you were talking about? Perfect. Perfect, yes. We got a microphone. Your style.
I know you're very sensitive to other cultures. I'm just wondering how you use that in business when you're working with other cultures within our own society. I think that's such a broad spectrum of backgrounds, and people react differently in different situations and make different verbal communication. And sometimes they act, I know when I'm working with African Americans, even the physical interaction is very different than dealing with white clients.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and it's so important, not just in cultures, but in gender normalities these days. There's so many different things that are at play, and so having an acute awareness of differences, not for labeling's sake, but for understanding and getting a sense. So it's super important to get a sense of what's going on and recognize that you have somebody different from you across the table. How are you? How are you viewing them? What is the lens you're bringing to the table? And then what can you find from them about what lens they may be bringing to the table? Again, being very attentive to listening and hearing what people mean, not what they say. And then also getting a sense of the cultural norms, right? If you go to India and you see this, it doesn't mean the same thing as it does in the US. This does not mean the same in India when you're talking to people, right? And there's certain cultures that I know as a paralegal, I would go in as this American from a multinational company. And I would go in and I'd talk to attorneys in other countries and I'd say, well, this is what I want to do. And they would be like, okay. And I'd later find out after a lot of digging, we really can't do that. But they were afraid to tell me. And they were like, well, you know what you do, you know what you want. And we were just trying to figure out how to make it happen. And I'm like, but if it's not legal to do, you're supposed to tell me and say, what I would really recommend is you do this, right? But it was that American culture and, dare I say, pushy culture. I went in, I'm like, this is what I want, this is what we need to do, and this is what I'm asking you to produce. And then it comes back that we really shouldn't be producing that. That's the wrong document. And we use these, and this is what we can do. Well, why didn't you tell me that? We could have saved, a couple of days, right? But it was me not recognizing my culture and what they were feeling from me. So that I couldn't say, this is what I want, this is the ultimate thing I want to have. Can you tell me what are the appropriate documents? What's our time frame, and can we do this? What's the best way to do this? So that I hope will help in that respect. I mean, being culturally sensitive to the norms is one thing. Being sensitive to norms is another thing. But being open to the fact that everybody is not the same just because they're from that culture, right? So I was in Colombia, I had two business groups. One was female only, because a number of the females didn't feel comfortable sharing their ideas with the co-ed group. There were a number of females, Colombian females, in the co-ed group that, man, they had no problems. So all Latina women are not the same. Some needed something to feel safe and to feel stronger and to get their feet underneath them. Some didn't, but I made room for all that showed up or wanted to show up. So that's kind of how it needs to play. It's, it's an individual, we're all individuals. And just recognizing everybody in their individuality. Anything else? All right, great. My pleasure. And my information is right there for anybody that's interested.